And so, yeah, if you don't want to be recorded, then please keep your camera off. Okay, so welcome everybody, and thank you so much for joining our event, Can I Really Make a Difference? We've got some fantastic panelists this evening who will be sharing their expertise and insights into that question. And hopefully it will be a very inspiring evening, and we'll all leave at the end of the evening and feel very empowered and inspired to keep going and change things and see how we can create that future that we want to see. So thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to just take a second to introduce each of our panelists. So as you can see on the screen, we have Dr. Laura Fogg-Rogers from UWE, Harriet Matthews from Byway, Tom Bailey from Take the Jump, and me, Anna Hughes from Flight Free UK. So Laura, would you like to just introduce yourself to everybody and tell us a little bit about yourself and your work?
Yep, certainly. So hi everyone. I'm Laura. I work at the University of the West of England in Bristol, and I'm a social psychologist. So I study groups and particularly communications and behaviour change. So we're thinking about how we can change behaviours using a lot of that social psychology, which really amounts to role modelling and mentoring, or kind of like, group support, that kind of thing, which I'll talk about later in this session. So I actually worked in an engineering department. So I work with aerospace engineers who are designing the planes of the future, I hope, some of them less so. And we're looking at behaviour change within our engineers and scientists as well. So designing the technologies of the future, public engagement, working with communities, co-development of activities as well, what we call citizen-led emissions reduction. So people coming up with the things going to work for their communities and local area. And then through a lot of those research projects I've done, we've done a lot of emissions reduction work. It led me to start thinking about my own personal behaviours. How can I be telling other people to change their behaviours when I'm not changing mine? And 2019, I took the decision to sign the Flight Free pledge. And then 2020, it proved very, very easy, as we know, so because COVID hit and there wasn't much temptation at all. But then since then, I have flown, and we found other ways of going on holiday. It does get easier, although it is still strange chatting to friends, which we will talk about, I'm sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Great to have you. Harriet, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Great to be here. My name's Harriet and I work for Byway. Byway is a flight-free travel company. So we plan beautiful itineraries overland across Europe and beyond now, actually. We've recently started doing trips to Morocco, which is very exciting. And I am the product content manager at Byway. So essentially a lot of my role is planning how we're going to expand our itineraries, develop, incorporate new places, and essentially help get more people going further afield to reach more destinations flight free. I also write Byway's bi-weekly newsletter, which is great fun. And yeah, I work quite a lot with the technology that helps create the itineraries. Byway is kind of the first of its kind technology that helps dynamically plan these sorts of trips. So it's really exciting to be involved. We're still relatively new. I've only been there for 2 years myself, but it's been a fantastic journey, pardon the pun, but it's been amazing. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here and hopefully have lots of chats about impact and yeah, I think I feel very strongly that we see firsthand at Byway the impact of kind of people making a pledge to go flight free, and particularly passionate about the alternative being as equally inspiring and beautiful, and not something that is quite the sacrifice that I'd always thought it was.
Thank you, Harriet. Yeah, there's so much. We're really looking forward to hearing some of those examples of, how your personal decision to take a flight-free holiday can actually change things. So yeah, really looking forward to that. Byway started during the pandemic, didn't it? What an odd time to launch a travel company.
Yeah,
it seems to be working, so well done. And Tom Bailey from Take the Jump, would you like to say hi and explain what Take the Jump is?
So I think just to check, this is not the full answering the questions you set out, right? This is just saying hello.
Yeah, just an intro.
Okay, right, just to check. Okay, hello everybody. My name's Tom, and I'm from Take the Jump. I'm in Bristol as well. I see there's some Bristol crew, and Laura there from UE. Laura, we've got to catch up at some point. So yeah, and Take the Jump is a kind of year-old, joyous citizen-led movement that's kind of all around the UK. Got 20 groups around the UK. We've recently launched in New Zealand. We're about to launch in Germany and Canada, and we're helping people move from a world of consumerism, and I'm separate from each other and separate from the world, and separate from nature, to a future of less stuff and more joy, through an empowering set of steps that we call taking the jump. And yeah, we'll hear more about that soon. So, and my background's in green energy policy, green energy technology, all that kind of stuff. And then something happened about 3 years ago where some research showed me that my whole career had been barking up the wrong tree. And so I had a crisis, and then a bunch of similarly minded colleagues helped to set up Take the Jump. So look forward to talking more about that soon and get to know you all. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so it's all about reducing emissions in various areas, isn't it? Yeah, really looking forward to hearing more about that. So to finish the intros, I'm Anna, the director of Flight Free UK, and I should probably explain kind of why we decided to hold this event, because this is a little bit different to the events we usually hold. A lot of our events are informational. We've talked about technology and greenwash. We often do travel specific events, so sharing people's inspiring stories of their overland travels, whether that be in Europe or the UK, but actually getting to the nub of why we are running, why Flight Free UK even started, I think was quite important, because so often we're asked, well, what's the point of me taking action? Because, you know, look at what's happening, especially this week, goodness me, with the U-turns and the rowing back on climate action from the government, with the net zero targets, and the action on net zero being completely decimated, I suppose. And also the horrible news today that the Rosebank oil field has been approved. So all of these things can make it can make us feel very helpless and disempowered. But so wanting to demonstrate and to illustrate how it is important that we take action, and how that then relates to the systemic change we need to see. That's why we're running this event. So, but yeah, just a tiny background on Flight Free UK. So it started in 2019. I think that was the year for many people to really become climate aware, and lots of organizations sprang up then. And as Laura said, of course, we then had the pandemic. So all the people who'd taken the Flight Free pledge found it probably a lot easier than they thought. But yeah, the idea is that we ask people to take a year off flying, and that's our method of behavior change. It's about trying the alternatives and breaking a habit, and of course, directly reducing emissions straight away. So that's what the organisation is. We're a charity now as well, registered last year, which is fantastic. And our mission is simply to inspire people and encourage them to travel without flying, to stay grounded, and to spread the word, because a lot of this, the benefit of our own actions, and hopefully this will come out tonight, one of the main things that we can do is talk to other people about it, because we all have our ripple effect and we all have our sphere of influence. So yes, let's get started with with learning a little bit more about the work that our panelists are doing. So we'll start with Harriet. So yeah, I've got here the social media tags. So Byway, at Byway Travel on Twitter. I'm still calling it Twitter, guys. And then at byway.travel on Instagram. So Harriet, if you could just, I mean, I'm so excited about your work, and I'm really pleased that it's so successful, that it is, you know, going places, so to speak. But can you just outline how we as consumers, how our choices, and when we buy a Byway holiday, what difference does that actually make? You know, how can we change things by choosing to travel without flying?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we really see it in quite a holistic way at Byway. We kind of have perhaps the the clearest place to start is sometimes looking at what the actual reduction in emissions are. So our impact report recently came out, which, you know, gave us the figure that, you know, opting for a Byway holiday, you're reducing your carbon emissions by 85% compared to a air-based equivalent. So that's, I guess, the headline in terms of carbon reductions on a really individual, at a really individual level. I think kind of tied up in that sustainability piece is our kind of some of the stuff that we're doing on social sustainability as well. So when you take a Byway holiday, you're reducing your carbon, but you're also supporting the local communities that you're visiting. So we really try and prioritise independent, locally owned accommodation. And the wonderful thing about taking trains is that you are supporting the local infrastructure that people use, and you are helping keep that going, I guess, for the places that you visit, which is tied up in all of the sustainability related things. I guess to zoom out a little bit more, and something that is hopefully this whole conversation will spark more of, is that is the kind of social, the community, the bit around inspiration and inspiring other people. You know, we're not, our individual behaviour doesn't kind of exist in silo. And the amazing thing about travel is you go away on holiday and all you want to do is talk to everyone else about it and say how important it is. And we really see firsthand at Byway that ripple effect that you talked about and how impactful that is. So I think that is, it's something that's a little harder to measure, but it's really, really impactful as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of zooming out a bit. And then to zoom out even more is this kind of systemic piece. And I think that's something that can feel a little bit harder. But I think at Byway, something that we're really excited to be doing more as we grow and as we scale is upping our policy advocacy, upping our activist work. So when you buy a Byway holiday, your money is going into supporting all of that work. So pushing the government to be subsidising better for rail, making overland travel a more accessible option. So that is where kind of your money is going as well. So you're kind of tackling all of those three things, that really individual bit around carbon saving, the kind of being part of that social movement that's gathering momentum and inspiring other people to take flight-free travel, and then that bit around systemic change and all the work we're doing to try and push that from as a business.
And do you have a specific figure of how much carbon has been saved by people taking Byway holidays?
Yep, so in our impact report, which recently came out, we had in the last year 540 Byway trips run with 170 tons of carbon saved.
Wow.
So that was kind of the figure that we came out of. So yeah, it's massive, really. Yeah,
that's amazing. Yeah, and so because the impact is in the direct emissions reductions. So, you know, if people are choosing to travel in this way rather than taking the flight, that absolutely does reduce emissions straight away. But yeah, I'm so interested in that, the wider implications of this, because of course your venture is a commercial venture and we are consumers. And so if we are supporting something like your venture, we are pushing the industry towards that, aren't we? We're shaping the industry with that. And I was so pleased to see, so you've recently started a new partnership with
First Choice came out recently.
Tell us about that. That's so exciting, because that's TUI, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's a branch of TUI that is we very recently announced our partnership with, and it was something that I think as a company we had some educating to do, and I think rightfully there were some questions on, you know, you're promoting overland journeys but you're partnering with an aviation heavy brand, and I think this really comes back to what we were trying to do at Byway, which is making flight-free travel mainstream. And we really don't want to exist in this kind of echo chamber of people that just will always take the train and never fly. And, you know, absolutely hats off, this is, you know, the people that we need, but we also need to be breaking out of that echo chamber and reaching a mainstream audience. And that's really what partnering with First Choice has enabled us to do. I guess also as well, interestingly on that point, is that our impact report really highlighted the amount of people that were coming to us that were flying more than rarely. So we're not just seeing people come to us to ask for a Byway trip, that people that never fly, they're people that actually are maybe taking the odd flight, they're flying maybe once a year for a holiday or whatever, and they're open to this idea of flight-free travel as an alternative way to experience the world, which is really, really encouraging.
Yeah, fantastic. And is that, I mean, all of this is about normalizing flight-free travel, and as you say, making it mainstream. So, and that partnership, did you chase that, or did that come to you? Do you think TUI kind of got to the point where they were like, hang on, people want this now? Or do you think that's why they're open to it?
I think there was some clear value for a bigger company to be leading the industry in the direction that it needs to go in. And I think at Byway, we've been very proactive in asking, bigger travel companies and saying, you need to take this step. It's not something that should be happening on the periphery of the travel industry. It's something that the mainstream industry needs to take up. So I think it was a bit of it was a lovely kind of union, I guess, of us and them. But really, amazing to see such a mainstream travel provider leading the way in that direction.
Yeah. Oh, well done, and good for you. I mean, it really does show that things are changing, and more companies will follow. So thanks and well done. And audience, as you can see at the bottom here, it says Flight Free UK supporters get £50 off a Byway holiday. So that information is on our website. If you go to flightfree.co.uk, it's on the how-to page, so that's in the top menu. And then if you click how to find routes and destinations, that will take you, that would give you this information. And also, as a kind of reciprocal thing, we then get a small donation from Byway for anyone who comes to the holiday through us. So it's a nice way of working, and it means we're supporting each other. So please do check out Byway. Actually, Harriet, if you're able to just pop your website in the chat now, so people can have that on record as well. Fantastic. Okay, right, next. Oh, hang on. Next, Laura. So Laura from UWE, that's your Twitter there, at Laura Fogg-Rogers. If people want to look you up, and also if you have links you want to share in the chat, please do. Something I was really impressed with something you just posted the other day, which was in the face of government doing absolutely the wrong thing, some of us are still doing the right thing. And this is a new course that we're just starting at UWE Bristol, a climate education course. So can you tell us about it, and how are you going to be teaching students about their role as individuals in the climate crisis?
Yeah, sure. So the course itself came about through students asking for it. So some committed students in business, actually, in economics, came forward, said that they'd like to have a climate education course. It went through our university management, was taking quite a while. So they did a petition and got loads of signatures for universities. Kind of students are our customers. And so when the students want that, that's something that, is taken forward. And we decided in March that we'd do it, and managed to get the course together for September this year, which is very quick for a university. We move very slowly. So yeah, it's fantastic. And what we've done is we've brought together experts from across the university. It's not just about, so you can get carbon literacy courses, which are like, how much carbon it comes from where and what can we reduce emissions with. It's broader than that. So it's looking at the impacts, social justice, social change, behaviour change, future careers as well. So green jobs are becoming a big thing of the transition, basically, as we move into these new industries. There'll be whole new jobs created. And the course looks at all that. And very much it's about trying to get students to make a change. And that's their end project that they have to do to show they've done the course. and it's available to over 30,000 students that we have at UE. It's online because we're reaching that many students, but we're running events around it as well. So climate cafes, which are about supporting each other and acknowledging the psychological cost of the climate crisis, and also Climate Fresque, which is a climate education activity that you can do. And so the change that we're getting students to think about, we're thinking at an individual level. So that might be, they're asked to kind of look at their personal carbon footprint. What could they personally change within that, within, you know, a multitude of ways that there are available. Then we talk about, could you also though talk about this kind of in your social groups or local communities? And that's my specialism, social psychology. I can talk more about kind of the theories of that in a minute, but making a difference with your friends, your family, people, you know, people who look up to you, if you like. And then the third way is sort of society or system change. So that's where, you know, some students might be taking the route of launching a big campaign or setting up some of the companies that we're hearing about tonight, you know, really trying to make a huge difference. But that does feel like a big thing for a student to do. So we're looking at those three levels of actions you can take, which are all individual. You know, so when we frame behaviour change, it's usually sort of pitted between individual and system change. But, you know, they're two sides of the same coin, because system change is us, we are the system. If the system changes, our behaviour changes. And if our behaviour changes, the system changes. So we have to see behaviour change somewhere. It's just how much is it supported by the government? I hope a lot more in future. And how much, you know, how easy is it to make that change? Are you doing it against the system or kind of with the system? Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, such a good point, and one that we make continuously. So the idea that system change and individual change are two sides of the same coin. Yeah, I think that you really illustrated that very well. Thank you. So what about then, tell us more about the social psychology and the theory and how that, you know, what that's your specialism. So how does that relate to individual action?
Yeah, so there's sort of two main theories. We're going to do a theory bit, and then like how do you imply that? So two main theories I draw on. So a lot of psychology sort of looks at us as individuals, and sort of, you know, it's like rational economic man in kind of economic theory, that we're all sort of our own little people who just make our own little decisions on our own. You know, and we know that's not true. We're all part of society, groups connected to each other. And there's sort of two theories that kind of, well, lots more, but two I draw on that explore on that. So social identity theory is the idea that part of our own identity comes from the groups that we're in. So that's where you kind of basically in groups and out groups, so people who you think are like you and people who you think are very much not like you. And then we use like social badges to sort of talk, like sort of show, hey, this is the group that I'm part of. Flying can be one of those badges for some people, you know, like where did you go on holiday this year, or yeah, what, you know, what, where's it? So a lot of kind of European holidays for some people, or you know, other kind of richer people are talking about which far-flung destination they've been to, and they're kind of like social badging to show what groups they're part of. So that's one way. The other is social cognitive theory, which recognises very much that we learn from each other. So we don't learn in isolation, just this information going in and us processing it. We look at others, we look at how well they get on, how they're treated, what's approved, what's not approved, and we learn from that. And so within social cognitive theory, there's some sort of two key bits. So we learn from our own experiences, but we also learn from vicarious experiences. So that means other people's experiences. And verbal persuasion, which means like how people either treat other people or how they respond to what we're doing. And that's, for me, really where kind of showing that there is a different way to do things, i.e. flight free or taking a Byways holiday and so on, and talking about it or showcasing it or badging it in a different way, are where you can then persuade people in your social group, so your social identity, and who are going to listen to you. So you are a role model for other people. And also you can, like, verbally persuade other people. So say things that are going to reinforce their behaviours or sometimes disapprove of kind of other behaviours as well. If we look at something like smoking and how that's become just not the norm anymore, it went from completely the norm to a behaviour now that's really socially, difficult, looked down upon. And that is through all these a lot of policy change. Obviously, we need that policy change to make it happen. But it's also about the social norms of what's considered normative. So what's acceptable in social circles. And that's all to do with kind of who is smoking, who's in your social group, and how others are responding to it. So those key things of role modeling and how we respond to individual behaviours are the key things that we can sort of draw on for flying.
Yeah, brilliant. And good parallels there with the smoking, because you're right. We as humans are very resistant to change, but then when change happens, we adapt very quickly.
Yeah.
And that needs to happen with flying. We need to get to the point where we have completely normalized not flying, and got to the point where if you're still flying, it's a bit icky. So thanks for that. I wanted you put me in mind of the fact that often as well, though, our influence can be without us realizing it. So we don't even have to kind of actively challenge the people in our social group about high carbon behaviors. Just simply by modeling ourselves, that will filter down, even if you don't think it is. So I think that's important to remember as well. And then especially with Harriet, your work, it's really easy to model that behavior because, as you say, holidays are really Instagrammable, aren't they? And the kinds of things that you want to share. So if you are having a great flight-free holiday, then it's much easier to tell everybody else about it. Okay, so we're just going to hear from Tom next. Before we do, just to remind everybody, we are going to be taking questions at the end. So if you have any questions that come to mind as our speakers are talking, please do drop them in the chat. Our team member Saren will be managing the question session after we've heard from our panelists. So please do write down whatever's on your mind, and we'll hopefully come to yours. So Tom, do you want to share your screen, Tom, or what's going?
Should we see if that works? Let's have a go. You cannot share while the other participant is showing, so maybe we have to stop. If that's right.
Oh, eek. Go on then.
Here we go. All right. Hi everyone. Hopefully this will be worth it, because I think it's part of what makes Take the Jump. What it is how it looks and feels. So let's see if this works. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we put the joy in system change and in stopping climate change and so on. Less stuff, more joy. That's our phrase. We're called Take the Jump. And so far I'll just give you a bit of background on the movement, the scale we've got to. We've reached about 2 million people. Thousands have taken the jump, whatever that means, you'll find out. We have 20 local groups around the UK. As I mentioned earlier, we're launching internationally. We're in Greta Thunberg's book as the best thing citizens can do to have an impact on climate change last year. Or one of the best things, actually. And we've had 100, there's now nearly 200 trained ambassadors in the UK and in the Americas and all around the world. 5-week course learning how to communicate and compel, be compelling and positive in their interactions with people. So it's a buzzing and growing movement. But what is it? Where does it come from? This piece of research called The Power of People was done by Leeds University, Arup, C40, 2 million quid, 18 months, thousands of experts all around the world, built a massive computer model of the impact of the economy globally and how we get back within planetary boundaries. And they had lots of crazy findings, some of which ruined my career, as I said, or my career as it was at that point. But one of them was this, which is that actually citizens are not powerless, right? And this is a very particular number, right? What this shows is that at least 27% of the change needed between now and 2030 to avoid ecological breakdown, citizens and communities can deliver directly. These are changes that citizens have primary influence over. So there's all these other changes that happen in the system and the world around us, which we have indirect influence on, and we can have a massive influence on, and we are crucial to bringing around. But we're not necessarily the primary influencer, as the academics refer to it. But there are these things that we can go get on with right now. We don't need to ask any permission. And so, this whole idea that, oh my God, I can't do anything. The world's going down the pan. Rishi Sunak doesn't care. He's actually making things worse. So, your heart starts fluctuating. You want to put, you can't sleep at night. What about my kid's future? You're just like, oh, just stuff it. I'm buying that BMW anyway, and I'm going on a holiday, and we're all doomed. I might as well make some hay while the sun shines, right? Well, actually, we are not powerless, right? We can deliver. And to a lot of people, 27% doesn't sound like a lot. But if you've got a background in modeling of climate decarbonisation, there are, if you imagine how complicated the world economy is, there's thousands of contributing factors to how our carbon profile builds up. To be able to find one chunk that's as big as this is almost unheard of, right? So this is massive. This is a big deal. And so how do we do it? How do we get that 27%? I'm going to run through 6 shifts, right, which are the changes we can all make that will deliver this. I'm going to run through really quickly and then get to the one around aviation, because that's what we're here to talk about, but just so you get a flavor for them, right? So quick fire. And then if you want to find out more about them, check out takethejump.org. So end clutter, keeping your electronics and your products for at least 7 years. So your phones, white products, laptops, smoke, all that kind of good stuff. Travel fresh, moving towards, we need less cars on the road. I know electric vehicles are really snazzy and we all want them and stuff, but if everybody just replaces their fossil fuel car with an electric vehicle and vehicle consumption keeps going up like it is, we're in a bad place. So we need less cars on the road. Cycling, walking, public transport. Eat green, unsurprisingly, plant-based diets, don't waste your food. Not completely plant-based diets, actually, just mostly. So you can still eat a bit of meat and dairy and so on. Change the system. All the other changes are about the things we have primary influence over on, but this one acknowledges that we can influence the world around us, and we invite people, when they take the jump, to do at least one thing within change the system. So swap to a green energy supplier, change your pension to a green pension, get involved in politics if you want, do some ecosystem restoration. There's a whole range of things in there. So, and we invite people to do one of them. Dress retro. The impact of textiles is obviously very high. The average American, get this, buys 50 new items of clothing a year. Can you imagine that, right? And we need to get down to 3. So it doesn't involve socks and underwear, luckily. So you can, but you can still recycle, rent, share, upcycle, buy secondhand. You can still look fabulous, but trying to get down to this number of 3. And then the big one at the last one, the one that is most related to today, is holiday local. Keeping our flights to 1 every 3 years, short haul, 1 return flight every 3 years, short haul, 1 return flight every 8 years, long haul. Now, these numbers were based on this massive piece of research that looked at what government, industry, and so on need to do. And all of these numbers, the global convergence point. So this actually represents a massive increase in flying for most people. Not banning it out altogether, right? So for a lot of people in the UK, that's a real reduction needed. But if you live in, Tamil Nadu in India, this is probably, a massive increase in your flying. And so that's the kind of target we have here. And obviously, as we've heard today, it doesn't mean you have to go back to living in a cave. You can still go see every culture in every continent in your lifetime. If you live the average life length, you can still interact with other communities around the world. And so, it doesn't mean we have to give up everything we like. That's taking the jump, is to try these for at least 1, 3, or 6 months. Just to tease out, I think what we might get onto in a bit, that's what taking the jump is. And I think this is, but a lot of people are like, yeah, well, so what? That's information. How do I make that change when the world's making it really, really hard? Planes are cheap, trains are expensive, right? How on earth do I do that? I want to take my kids on holiday. I want 2 weeks of sun, in a year after all my hard work in rainy Britain. What do I do about that? Well, how we approach change is just as important as the change we make. And there's 5 foundations, but I'm going to really quickly go through 3 of them. The first is trying is enough to just start. Even if you can't do this perfectly, do what you can, right? And build towards this target. But it's not about shaming people, right? And it's not about telling people they're really bad if they can't do this, which is the second one. No more us and them. And just to say, like, our team go around the whole country and the world talking about this. And the holiday local one is the one sometimes when we talk about this, we get some strong reactions, right? And if we want to explore why, imagine you've got family living abroad that you deeply love and you've got to go see twice a year. And someone sees one return flight every 3 years. It's like being punched in the chest. They're like, oh, and it hurts. Like, you're telling me I can't see my family. What? And then there is a real process required where, of honoring and feeling that, going and sort of listening to where people are with how this feels and how difficult this is in the world we live, and not being like, but you just got to suck it up because of climate change, and so this process of honoring and kind of being there with people and helping them move on this step-by-step journey is really important. And the last bit is this is jump for joy, right? We're not going back to living in caves. We're not giving up everything we love. We can still travel around the world. And there's loads more I could say about this, but I'm conscious my time's probably going over. So thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks, Tom. What a whistle-stop tour through your work. That's fantastic. Should we switch over screens again? Right, let me do this. Okay. Thank you. So, if you want to just drop the link into the chat as well, and I'll make sure that this gets sent to everybody after the event, because it's so it's so key, isn't it? And really inspiring, all of your work that you're doing. Thank you. And I think it's very useful to have that outline with numbers, because being able to kind of quantify it and say one short flight every 3 years and one long flight every 8 years, because here at Flight Free UK, our message isn't that you can never fly again, even though the people who've decided that are amazing. Like that's kind of, you know, the less you can fly, the better. So your ration doesn't mean you have to take a flight every 3 years. But yeah, it's a useful illustration for people who perhaps haven't considered reducing their flights, or maybe don't know what that looks like. So to be able to say, actually, could you pare it back very substantially for some people? And, you know, once every 3 years is probably what you should be looking at. I think that's really useful. So thank you. Okay, so before we get on to our little quick fire question round, because something we want to do is to give you, the audience, some answers to common questions, perhaps. So we all have people around us who will challenge us when it comes to individual behaviour change. But yeah, so we'll come on to that in a second. But I would like to outline a few things about the work we do at Flight Free UK, and how that does relate to social change and system change in the way that we've already heard from Harriet, Laura and Tom. So as I mentioned to start with, a lot of the work that we do is encouraging people on an individual level to reduce the amount they fly, specifically by taking our Flight Free challenge. So to the kind of ultimate challenge is to be flight free for the year. We have different levels below that, though, if people have different circumstances, like, as Tom mentioned, the family abroad. So it could be, okay, well, I will be flight free except for when I visit my family, which is once every 2 years, or once every few years, however much that is. So I think it's helpful and empowering to be able to have that ownership of the behaviour change and of the choice. And because it can be quite scary to change behaviour, especially if you are someone who is in the habit of taking several flights a year, being able to give it a try then reassures you that, no, you didn't have terrible holidays, you actually had quite nice holidays, or explored a bit more of the UK perhaps, still maintained the relationships that you wanted to maintain, and how can this behaviour then filter through to future behaviour in future years. So that's the idea behind the individual pledge. And then, as I mentioned, so much of this is about the social influence that we all have. So even though any of the stuff that has already been illustrated, so sharing the stories of your flight free travels with the people around you, sharing it on social media, it's a great way to create a narrative, and simply by doing these things you have that ripple effect. The frustrating thing at the moment, and we will come on to this actually with the Q&A, is the lack of government change. And I've come to mind that we sort of we've got to the point where it's like, I don't have any faith in this government to do the right thing. I don't really have any faith in the next government to do the right thing either. I think that is where the individual change becomes so much more important, because we desperately need the right policies to make low carbon travel more accessible for everyone. For example, we need to tax aviation fuel. We need to challenge rather than reward frequent flying. If you fly more, you pay more. We need to open up accessibility in rail travel, in coach travel, those kinds of mass transit modes. And that does require government policy. And in theory, if we as individuals can demonstrate that we want to have low carbon travel, then the politicians will put the measures in place because they know that we're the voters, right? So they'll do the things that they think are going to win votes. Unfortunately, I've lost my faith now in this government, especially doing that. It seems that, I mean, Rishi Sunak is on the side of drivers, right? He's helicoptering all over the place and taking his private jet when you could easily get the train. So not much faith there. But then that is when it has to be us. Then, it has to come down to us, and that's where our behaviour can influence the other thing that needs influencing, which is industry. So government policy, if we have to leave that one, so be it. But we can influence industry, and hopefully what Harriet explained really does demonstrate that and illustrate that, because our consumer spending power is very powerful and impactful. And if we are buying an airline ticket, we're saying, I'm okay with this. This is what I want more of. If we're buying a ticket for train travel or coach travel or ferry travel, we're saying, yes, this is what I want. And we are seeing industry really respond to changing trends. And that's what this is. It's a trend. So this year, there have been more rail routes opening up across Europe, specifically night trains, which is a fantastic way to travel in an efficient manner. Also ferry routes. So there's a new ferry route starting between just north of Edinburgh and Belgium, as far as I can tell. Also, last week, I took part in a cross-channel sailing trip, which was for a new ferry, as close to zero carbon as you can get ferry, that would sail from Dover to Boulogne for the benefit of foot passengers and cycle passengers. And the idea is to harness the power of the wind and make a commercial venture out of this. And that's in direct response to the fact that people are choosing to travel in this way more than they have before. So we can really influence the market. We can really influence industry. And actually, that's where I feel our influence is felt most strongly at the moment, especially when, we have this ridiculous government policy. Having said that, we can put pressure on the government. And one of the things we could do is petition. So Laura already mentioned petitions in terms of something you can do as with reference to her student course. We had a government petition last year that we are going to be doing another one with regards to domestic flights this year. And even if the answers aren't the right ones, which come from government, the narrative is there, and the subject is being put on the table in front of politicians. So that's one way to do things as well. So yeah, that's kind of a little bit of an overview. So why don't we move on to our quick fire questions, and then we will open it up to questions from the floor. So again, if you have something that's on your mind, then please ask it in the chat. Or when we come to the session, you can raise your hand if you'd like to ask the question live to our panelists. But yeah, it's possibly just easier to drop it in the chat, and then we can go through those questions. But yeah, so panelists, what do you say to people who say, there is no point in me stopping flying because the plane will fly anyway? Does anyone want to come in on that one first? Go on, Tom.
Thank you. And just building in what you were just saying there earlier, I think I want to just a controversial statement. Politicians don't and can't lead, really, right, in many ways, because imagine the population is like this chunk here, and then in a democracy, you vote in the person in the middle. And if you're trying to drive like really pioneering change, then you need to be at this end, pulling the kind of oval to window across. If you look at history, right, the scientific revolution, the industrial revolution, civil rights, gay rights, gender rights, none of these things appeared in the mind of a system leader, right, who was like, I know what to do. We need gay marriage, and then tells everybody what to do. It emerged after we had this joyous, vibrant, amazing culture that sort of began at the community and individual level, that pulled our collective mindset into a new place. And if you look at history, that's where most of the big systemic shifts happen. So if someone asks me, well, what's the point of me not flying? It's like, well, that's the point, because like if you want to change, we can sit here and point at government all we like and be like, oh, we need this big systemic change. Like you were saying earlier, system change and individuals are the two sides of the same coin. Until we've got that groundswell of people embodying a more wonderful way of living, you won't get that change at the top. So that's the real power we have. As much as the impact of you reducing your flight reduces a certain amount of carbon we can calculate, that's important. But the really big thing is you start to change the way we all think about stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, Harriet or Laura, do you have an answer to the plane will fly anyway?
Yep, so exactly that. Oh, sorry, Harriet.
Come on, Laura, you go first.
So exactly that. So the Overton window is kind of this idea that, again, it's like the normative curve. So thinking about something's like kind of radical, crazy, and then it moves through to like, well, kind of quite sensible until eventually it's just, well, of course, that's just normal. That's what people do. So that's kind of that shift that we kind of want to see in people. So, and also business though as well. So at first, yes, actually that's right. The plane will still fly away anyway at the moment because of ghost flights and kind of, booking windows and all this kind of thing. But eventually, if there's no money to be made in the plane flying anyway, it's not going to fly, is it? That's just business sense. So we have to shift it until it does become not a sensible thing to do.
Absolutely. Harriet, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think, with a lot of these things, there's this, let's be real, me not taking one particular flight isn't going to save the world. But if we keep filling these seats, it's definitely not going to change. Like, we can guarantee it's not going to change. So I think that's something that, definitely worth thinking about. And also, if you're not flying, then the alternative is you are in your other option would be train or something else that you can say, okay, I'm not going to fly, but I'm going to put vote with my money in a sense, and this is where I'm going to be pushing for that demand. So I think there's the push and the pull there, isn't there? So.
Yeah, definitely. I think one of the things that we tend to say is not flying is not going to solve the climate crisis, but we definitely won't solve it if we continue to fly. So yeah, that point there, Harriet. I think a nice illustration of this and the supply and demand thing is that before COVID came along and ruined all the stats, the year 2019 in Sweden, which was a year just after this very campaign had been running in Sweden, and there was a lot of climate awareness, and Greta Thunberg was talking about everything, and her parents, high profile people, not flying anymore. There was a 9% drop in flight bookings in Sweden in that year, and a 4% drop in international flight bookings, which is just unheard of because in every other society it's going up, right? So that does show that, and that was lots of individuals deciding that they weren't going to book a flight. And that's something that industry just has to respond to, annoyingly with greenwash, but that's another story. But yeah, I think there's so many answers to this question, and ultimately, yes, that particular plane will fly. But think about it like this: is that plane still flying because 200 other people decided it would also just fly? Collectively, we can change things. Okay, right, next one. There's no point in me stopping flying because of China. People do say this though. You get this kind of thing on Twitter. Oh, well, I won't change because other societies are way more polluting, e.g. China. Right, do we have an answer to that, panel? Laura?
So yeah, for me, it's about leadership, which is, some of the rift that we're seeing in the Conservative Party at the moment. So, I do think, that so there's a sort of a social justice argument. So Britain has created a lot of these historical emissions. We've kind of created a lot of this problem in the world. We therefore need to kind of be showing some of that leadership and kind of taking that step forward, changing the global narrative and so on. But also on a global scale and on an individual scale, how can you go and ask someone to do something that you're not prepared to do yourself? So that's kind of leadership and fairness. So there's a lot of psychological research about fairness, about what we consider acceptable. You know, if our leaders asking us to do something, we want them to role model and show that too. And I think that's on an individual level, but I think that applies on a world stage as well, that we need to be showing that we can, you know, as historical huge consumers, as current huge consumers, we need to be role modeling and showcasing that way forward.
Tom, do you want to come in?
Yeah, three quick things. Half the wind turbines built in the globally last year were in China. Most of China's emissions, well, a large part of China's emissions are, if you look at from a consumption point of view, to provide for Western consumption, and Chinese per capita emissions are vastly lower than ours. So it's you know, China, if any, you know, just as simple as that. Our emissions are so much higher. So don't blame China. They're doing loads. They're doing a lot more than we are per capita.
Great point.
And actually, their emissions are our scope 3 emissions. So actually, their emissions are the stuff we're just shipping in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Harriet, do you have anything to add, or do you think we've dealt with that one?
I think you've given some pretty fantastic answers to that one.
Okay. Right, let's kind of scoot through the last three, because then we can get on to questions from our audience. I'll deal with the next one. There's no point in me stopping flying, because aviation is only responsible for 2% of global emissions. So two very quick responses there, two answers. First of all, if you account for all of aviation's global warming effect, it's closer to 3.5%, which still sounds low, but it's because hardly anybody flies. The reason that global emissions from aviation are low is because 10% of the global population or less gets on a plane in any given year. So it's and those who do fly, if we're looking on a more localized level, in the UK it's 7% more if you look at the wider global warming impact. On an individual level, if you fly a few times a year, those flights will likely make up more than half of your carbon footprint. So yeah, it's only low because hardly anybody globally flies, even though we might think that they do, because here in the West, we do fly a lot. Okay, who wants to come in on all my friends and billionaires are still flying? I mean, we talked quite a lot about that kind of social proof, but Harriet, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first of all, it can be really challenging, I think, and you know, acknowledge that sometimes having these conversations and you feel like, oh, but I'm really trying to go flight free, why is it all my friends aren't seeing it? And I think, yeah, we've talked a lot about it, but the influence you can have on the people around you is sometimes really, really hard to see yourself. A good example was I did a trip with some colleagues, actually, which was from Byway, which was really fun. We did a big journey around Switzerland and Italy, and I came back and I was just so blown away by the whole thing. And I was talking about it, and then a couple of my friends have been planning this big ski holiday, and I got a message saying, oh, can we do it flight free? And I was like, yes, you can. So then 8 of us went away, and that whole trip became a flight free trip. And it wasn't a conversation that I remember coming away from thinking, yes, I've converted them to being flight free. It was something that came up as I was talking to them about the beautiful train journeys that I did through the Alps and all these amazing things that overland travel, the richness of that experience. So I think travel, compared to something, say, like changing your energy provider or recycling, those things aren't things that, you know, you can have over a dinner table conversation in the same way that you can talk and inspire with travel. So it's such it's a really specific type of sustainable behavior that is that fits into the kind of the field of influence and encouraging people to follow suit really, really well. So yeah. I think it's encouraging.
Great. Thank you, Harriet. What a great story. And so your website and your platforms share lots of these stories, don't they, of people's overland adventures, and so does ours. So on flightfree.co.uk we have a Be Inspired section, which shows it has testimonials from people who've taken our pledge and why, but as well, probably more inspiring and specific to this is that we've got lots of stories of travel from people all over the UK traveling to all over Europe and Northern Africa as well, even a couple across the Atlantic Ocean, which is also very exciting. So yeah, if you need examples of inspiration of people who have traveled without flying, and so you can say, oh, it is possible to get to X location, then please do take a look at that, and I will send links around for that as well. Okay, so then Tom, do you want to take the last one? It's up to the government, not me. I mean, I know we've covered this quite probably already, but just any last thoughts on that one?
Yeah, in that research that we did, there was a finding at the end, or there's a sentence that summarized the whole findings of who's responsible for what, right? And it was, we need all action from all actors now. There isn't time for us to wait. You know, this whole red herring of whose job is it to go first? If you look at the analysis, so local government, national government, industry, civil society, community, citizens, all of them have mission critical things we all need to be getting on with right now. And stopping and flying less is firmly in the individual's bucket, but of course government needs to do lots.
Yeah, love that. All action from all actors now. Fantastic. Thank you, Tom. I'm going to put that on a banner. Okay, so now we have 15 minutes remaining of our session, and so it would be great to hear from our audience if you have questions that you want to put to any of our panelists. So Seren, you have been monitoring our chat box. So have there been questions coming through? Would you like to read some out or put them to our panel?
Yeah, sure. There's been quite a lot of interesting questions and comments coming through. Some of them have been answered already, but quite a few of them from earlier on haven't. So I'll read those out, and then if anyone has any more questions, just type them into the chat box or just unmute yourself, I guess, and ask. So the first question is from Mike, who asked, car, airline and oil companies sell what we as consumers choose to buy or use. Fossil fuel usage is our collective responsibility. So how do we change consumers' minds?
I could come in there. Yeah. So yeah, kind of Antonio Guterres and Tom just said as well. So everything, everywhere, all at once. So I think, you know, within your sphere of influence, your locus of control, that's the sort of what you are a consumer. What are you buying? So that's we've talked about that a lot. You know, it's choosing different things. But then for some people, they don't have choice over what kind of if I'm not thinking about flying, because I think that's what's so interesting about flying. It very much is a choice, and it's very much for leisure. If we're talking about something like, you know, driving, actually, for a lot of people are trapped into driving. We've got a car normative system, you know. So then it's about influencing kind of the policy levers that might change some of this. So beyond yourself, so kind of thinking about government, local council, changing, you know, lobbying for car and for bike lanes and things like that. So yeah, trying to put those system points in, the tipping points or the policy changes that will help with that.
Maybe if I could just add as well, I mean, if the question was how do we change consumer society, how do we change consumer culture, it's like, and we're not consumers, we're people, right? And like this whole idea that like, what do I do? I've had a really bad day in this world. I don't know, my partner left me or whatever, I don't know, something bad happened at work. Get your phone out, go on Amazon, buy something, get your endorphin hit. I feel great for 10 seconds. Then I need to do it again. That's like the funk. Like if you look at Tim Jackson's work around the economy, amazing economist, right? The prosperity without growth. Talks about, you know, today is a consumer society, consumer culture, consumer mindset. I'm a separate being consuming things who has no worth and has to get that worth by accumulating things. I'm separate from the planet. The future economy will be one of creativity, care, and craft. And also with the work we've done with communities, they've been throwing up those other stuff, culture, celebration, collaboration, camaraderie. These are the things that make life actually worth living. So moving away, you know, this starts in education. It starts like advertising is the main sort of, horseman of the apocalypse that brings this into our hearts. But yeah, so changing advertising and education would be super helpful.
Can I just add as well to that, one of the social tipping points that we need to see is, yeah, thinking about banning advertising for fossil fuel infrastructure. So kind of, you know, ad-free cities, that kind of thing. And yeah, very much that framing of consumer actually makes people kind of like feel they've got less power and kind of buy more. Whereas changing that framing to I'm a citizen within a society with a social responsibility to other people, you know, changes our sort of responsibilities and rights within the society. That's why we talk about citizen-led climate action. So what do citizens want? What can we do as citizens to support each other? Completely changes how we relate to each other.
Okay, yeah, that's really interesting. I think unless anyone has anything else to add on that, we can move to the next question, which is from Helen, who asks whether we have any data on the number of flights that have been cut to evidence reduction in airline carbon emissions. I'm sure there's lots of stuff and resources on websites of your organisations, but if any of you have any statistics right now.
Yeah, Harriet, you mentioned already about the tons of CO2 that had been reduced or weren't going into the atmosphere because of people taking byway holidays. And we have similar. So since we started the Flight Free pledge, we've saved 20, oh no, hang on. 20,000 tons of CO2. Am I right in that? Which is a lot, which is great. Okay, I think I am right. Yes, I definitely am. 20,000 tons of CO2 from the atmosphere, and this is, I mean, it's all done on averages and people responding to our survey saying how much they might have typically flown, and then you have to say, oh, how, you know, what's the average distance and all that kind of stuff. So it's all approximation, but for everybody who takes our pledge, roughly 1 ton of CO2 is saved from the atmosphere for the year, but then of course it will be more because lots of people are influenced to fly less, even if they don't sign up on our website. So that's really reassuring. I think in terms of travel trends, I mentioned the Swedish statistic of a 9% drop. Now, we haven't seen any statistics that haven't been influenced by COVID. So that's quite upsetting for us because we really wanted to make a splash with Flight Free 2020. That was the first year we did the Flight Free Challenge. But yeah, we won't ever have those statistics because of COVID, of course. And I haven't seen any stats come out since 2019. So we possibly will have soon, but I don't know what the answer is. But Harriet, do you have more accurate info?
Yeah, obviously I mentioned the statistic that we had from our impact report. I'm just thinking about that comment, and I wonder whether there's something in that about saying measuring the carbon. If we're saying, oh, we're getting more people taking train travel, are we inadvertently therefore seeing less people flying, or are they just adding a train holiday to their list of holidays that they're doing? So I guess thinking about that, we in our impact report, when someone makes a booking with Byway, we ask what they would have done had they not been taking a Byway, and actually usually, so I'm just looking at our statistics now, if you hadn't have taken this Byway holiday, what would you have done? Now, the leading one that we had was people that would go by train, boat and bus anyway, but not very far behind that is people that would have flown. So we know that people aren't just saying, oh, okay, I'll still do my usual flight and I'll take a Byway holiday, a train holiday on the side. They're actually swapping. So I think that's a really interesting statistic to feed into that point.
Great. So we have another interesting question from Ariana, who asks whether you envision railway infrastructure being a diffuse global phenomenon, such as involving a global rendition of the Interrail pass, so like a Railway Africa pass or a Railway Asia pass. I know, Anna, you mentioned you've got like testimonials from people going to Africa, so maybe you've got experience.
Yeah. I don't know if Harriet, you're best placed for this because you're in the industry. I'm not sure the answer.
Yeah, I can certainly say that I really hope that is, you know, a flight-free system that allows people to travel transcontinentally is really something that I would really hope that we have. We've already seen, we're seeing obviously at the minute, we know some places are easier to get to. And I think we're going to be seeing more kind of people maybe embracing the really adventurous side of transcontinental travel. So, you know, some people have taken cargo ships across to Canada. And I think until we get to that point, there's going to be a need to embrace some of this kind of, if you want to get to the other side of the world, embracing this kind of more wacky, crazy type of adventure. And for some people, you know, that's not their idea of a relaxing holiday, but for some people, the amount of reward that they have in taking that journey as being this epic adventure to getting to a part of the world that is a real challenge, I think is super exciting. And I really hope that is the kind of direction that we're going in, for sure.
So we have a few questions related to whether we should just stop traveling completely. So sorry, the chat keeps moving. Mick asks whether moving people onto flight-free travel would be like moving people onto vapes from cigarettes. And I think there was an earlier question asking whether we should be like focusing on getting people to stay at home rather than traveling at all. So yeah, what would you say about this?
I'll go first on this, I think, and we probably all got something to say, but in brief, we very strongly encourage people to stay in the UK and explore where we are, even if that is, you know, your hometown. So you're really actually not taking what other people would call a holiday. We all need those times, though. We all need that downtime, and travel does give us a lot. But yes, ultimately, we need to do everything less. That's how we solve the climate crisis, or how we address the climate crisis. So traveling less, and by extension, if you are taking an occasional flight-free holiday through Europe or whatever, because it probably takes longer, because it probably costs a bit more, you're going to by nature be doing it less anyway. But yeah, absolutely, we need to stop having this must have everything now society and do everything a lot less. And when we do it differently. The reason that why at Flight Free UK, are probably, Harriet, you've got a similar view here. The reason that we do celebrate flight free travel quite so enthusiastically is because there are lots of people for whom the concept of stopping flying is just so alien and so far away from where they are, that if you were to say you can only take one holiday every 5 years, they're just gonna not engage at all. So being able to say, don't worry, you can still lie on that beach on the Côte d'Azur, just get there by train, and then but yeah, the very nature of it will mean that we are traveling less, and that's something we encourage.
And a nice question from Nancy, just asking whether we could have more events like this. It's nice to know there's a community of people who are also facing the same challenges and frustrating questions. Thanks, Nancy. Yeah, sure.
Anna, I just wanted, oh, sorry, am I allowed to just jump in on that question?
Please do, Harriet, yes.
Yeah, I think that's something that, I just wanted to speak to a little bit, because I think it comes down to meeting people where they are. And when you look at what the statistics are on how much carbon is saved by simply swapping a holiday by plane to a flight-free alternative, that is a really, really significant number. And for a lot of people, that is a really, really a big achievement. And I think something as well that we're quite passionate at Byway that we really try and integrate into our holidays is a slow travel approach. So as well as calling ourselves flight free, we also call ourselves a slow travel company. And essentially what that means is slowing down. So, you know, we don't do holidays that are about darting all over the place and kind of ticking off loads of things on a bucket list. We try and curate holidays that invite people to do things a bit gentler. And I think in turn, as people maybe have a holiday that's less jam-packed, they kind of come back to, you return from holiday and actually you've got a different mindset. And I think it makes therefore holidaying nearer more accessible to you. So I know when I started doing journeys that looked a bit different to my previous kind of flying, I became aware that I could appreciate the small moments of travel, and those small moments are also things that are afforded to us right on our doorstep. So my need to kind of escape and to go and travel more actually was something that I could really get a fix for in a long weekend in my local neighbourhood, or getting a train somewhere in the UK. So I think there's a bit of slow travel mentality that can happen when you meet people where they are, that they carry with them.
I think we're pretty much out of time, but Tom or Laura, did you have anything you wanted to add to any of those questions?
There's a lot of interesting ones coming in the chat now. Just on disapproval, so that is a really interesting one. So I think at the moment where we are with climate, because we're really trying to, as Harriet said, bring people from where they are through, it is difficult if someone who is perhaps, of a higher economic background or status and so on is disapproving. That's going to alienate a lot of people and cause a lot of culture wars difficulty. So I think the only time it can kind of be sort of useful is in our own social groups. And I won't say disapproval, I'd more say kind of less appreciation. So that's what I'm trying to do with some of my friends, is just be kind of, instead of going like, oh, wow, that sounds amazing, just more like, oh, okay. And sort of, not give that social approval that we're seeking for things. But yes, it's a difficult line to walk. And that's where policy can be useful. That's what policy did for smoking. It made it socially unacceptable through policy. And I think that's what's happened in France. They've kind of made, if it's easier to fly you can get the train for something less than 2.5 hours, you've got to do that rather than fly. So that's where we could use it, I think.
Tom, do you have any last thoughts before I bring everything to a close?
Well, I think maybe just to say thank you. I mean, I feel like, we've covered a lot of good stuff, and it's been great to meet you all. And, thanks for wonderful chat on, and we look forward to continuing conversations in the future. So thank you very much. Brilliant.
And thank you, Sarah, for fielding those questions for us. And thank you, everybody who asked a question. Inevitably, we always run out of time, but can I extend my thanks and hopefully the audience's thanks to our wonderful panelists. So Harriet from Byway, Laura from UWE, and Tom from Take the Jump. And I will be sending around the links to all of your work to our attendees after the event, so they can explore a bit more about what you're doing and hopefully get involved in some ways. Hopefully have a nice Byway holiday, all that stuff. So yes, thank you panelists so much. It's been so enlightening and it's interesting and hopefully very inspiring for our audience. If you would like to keep up to date with our future events, we share them all on our social media channels. So we're on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram, and all of those, it's at Flight Free UK. You can that links from our website as well. Oh, something I was going to say about our website, which was kind of prompted by that final question we just had about disapproval or how to talk to people. We have a guide on our website. It's a guide to having climate conversations, and it was written by Maya Rosen from Sweden, who set up the Flight Free campaign there, which inspired this very campaign. And she has some fantastic advice from her own experience and her own conversations that she's had as a climate activist. And the first piece of advice is simply to be nice. So yeah, there's lots of tips and specific things that you can say when somebody is asking questions like what we had in our quick fire session, but the way in which to do it. She actually had climate dinner parties, and she'd invite people around specifically to talk about this stuff, and so it's kind of an open space and you know what you're getting into. But yeah, have a look at that on our website. And finally, just to say thank you if you made a donation this evening. It really helps our work. So as it says here, all of our events are free to attend, but we do invite people to make a voluntary donation. So thank you if you did that. If you would like to donate, you can go to our website. We're in the final days of our fundraiser, our annual fundraiser. And the idea of the fundraiser is to make sure that we have covered all of our costs for running this charity for the year. So things like, well, I suppose this event costs money to put on because we have to pay a license to Zoom for it. Our website, our database, our mailing list, all of these kinds of things, and then our design software and all the kind of boring stuff that you need to run something like this. So please, if you're able to take it links from our website, so that's flightfree.co.uk. Our donation page is there. So yes, thank you so much. We will see you again next time, hopefully. Please just keep up to date, as I said, by following us on social media. And one last thank you to our wonderful panelists, and good night.
Thanks so much, Anna.
Thank you.